I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up. We have with us today two special guests, Phil Paston and Shane Valero, who are here to talk about their thoughts and ideas and plans for Old South Road. And several months ago, I guess, I don't know whether burst on the scene is the right expression, but the idea of the development sort of became something that arose to everybody's consciousness, if you will. I'm sure you all have been working on this for some time in the background, but while people know what it is that you're planning to do and would like to do, why don't you just describe it yourselves, so that
Sure. So as you know, back in August we acquired the former Galacki portfolio of 75 properties, and prior to that, Shane's family and myself were working on their property to bring a commercial development on it, which is geared to another supermarket for Nantucket. And during that process, which has been going on for about a year and a half, the Walter Galacki property became available, so we decided to acquire that as well, which gave us the benefit of being able to do a master plan on both sides of Old South Road in lines with what the town's vision is. And I would say for the last year and a half, we've been working with the town planning office and the Shop Plan area group to come up with the zoning changes that are being proposed by the town that complement also what the neighbors are looking for. And these articles that are being proposed by the town are really a factor of incorporating neighbors, the town's vision from the area master area plan from 2009 for the next 100 years of what should go there. So we've been happy to work with the group and understand what the vision of the town is, which we are fully in agreement with, which essentially calls
what's
for...
your perception of what the vision of the town is? Because I think a lot of people are confused about it.
Yeah, so as you know, there's not a lot of commercial business space left. But Old South Road has the traffic and has existing commercial businesses that are there. So with both sides of the street, we have a number of opportunities to continue to develop commercial space for the needs on the island. And their vision is to have, very much like the Valero property sits today, small liner buildings that front Old South Road with a larger building behind it. And as you might have seen through our neighborhood meetings that we've had for the Valero side of the property, we're proposing a 38,500 square foot supermarket that is set back from the road with the liner buildings along the street containing smaller businesses. We're going to do the exact same plan on the other side of the road where we will have smaller liner buildings and a larger building in the back, which is yet to be determined. The other part of our business plan is essentially threefold. One is to clean up the properties. Amongst all these properties we've had, I would say 90% of them require additional entitlements to bring them up to code, additional requirements to bring them into more of a modern condition. For example, some of these buildings are not attached to their foundations. They were placed in the foundations, but they're not securely attached.
Amazing they're still there.
Right.
Especially after last week.
Right. So Shane and myself have been working diligently for the last 6 months in getting all those buildings up to code.
So what is, Shane, what's your role with respect to the south side of Old South, the old Galacki properties? What's your role in that?
Well, it's, as you know, it's a big project and it's a team effort. So I've been working on helping get rid of some junk cars, helping do some cleanup, doing a little organization, try to make it a little more presentable. Because, as you know, there's so much acreage. Most people in Nantucket have never driven down that way, so they have no idea.
If they did, they were in for a shock.
If they did, they were in for a shock for sure. So it's one of those type of things now that everybody's talking about it. People take a drive down, and they're like, whoa, I've never seen something like that before. But
how many vehicles would you say that we've removed to date? Old, tired, rusted out vehicles?
I mean, the problem is it's like, watch the horror shows, everything's spread out so much, it's hard to put an exact number on it, but there's just so
it's
many.
A lot of bits and pieces, too.
And he's been collecting since the 40s. So you never know when you need that part, like an old-time farmer. You might need it.
60 vehicles already?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And you may have seen Shane and his equipment hauling it down to the ferry and taking it off.
Right.
But our first goal is to bring the integrity of the aquifer back into line, because these terribly old, rusted pieces of equipment are sitting right beside it, and that threatens the integrity of the aquifer. So we're removing those off the site completely. We are also bringing the roads up as we can to a better traveling condition than they have been left in. We are also working with our existing tenants, whether they be commercial or residential, on the commercial side to give them a new facility, more modern facility, and more easier opportunity for them to develop. That's sort of the
How many
first
residential units are there back in there
thing.
now?
So we acquired 30. There's more than 30, but we acquired 30, and we're selling those. And we're working with the tenants that are in those to find other housing as we begin to sell.
I'm going to
those.
digress here for a minute because you touch on a very important point, which is the absence of a good stock of rental housing.
Yes.
Affordable housing, not in the legal sense, but in the sense of
Right.
affordable rental housing. You've done some work, I believe, with Richmond Development in that area and
Certainly have.
other places. Nantucket has obviously tried to zone out, has effectively zoned out apartment complexes. Putting that aside for a moment, all other things being equal, and or perhaps if the commercial development doesn't work out, could some kind of apartment complex be built on the south side of Old South Road there that would be economically viable for the developer and yet affordable in the sense of...
Yes, as part of our master plan over the next 10 years, we hope to be able to add apartments and affordable housing for people on the island. We clearly see the need. It's been there for quite some time, and we do have the luxury of having enough land to provide that on our property. With or without the commercial development, we hope to bring that as well.
Because to me, I mean, personally, much more critical than the need for another grocery store or the need for some other large store out there is this issue of rental housing.
We acquired 70 acres, and that's more than enough property to accommodate all those types of interests. So as part of, to finish our 10-year plan, as we begin to clean up the property and bring it into its more modern state, we hope to have, at the end of the subdivision, a state-of-the-art industrial park for more of the light to industrial type uses in the back.
And that would be back in
That would be
off...
back on Dave Kim. And then we hope to bring more retail, small businesses up towards the point of Old South Road. We are actually proposing in the next, I'd say it would be coming to the planning board in the next 60 days, proposing 2 5,000 square foot retail / industrial flex buildings. These buildings are essentially built where you could have 10% office, 90% warehouse, 90% warehouse, 10% office. They're very flexible because it's become clear to us, and especially from the phone calls that we've been receiving, that there are lots of existing businesses in town that want to either expand and go to a more modern facility, or even new businesses. People
You're
are
talking
looking to
for
start
retail or office or both?
No, absolutely both, and industrial. And so we want to be able to give them that opportunity to do that on the island.
To the subject of a grocery store,
Sure.
there's I think it's fair to say among certain people there's a fair amount of skepticism as to whether it's economically viable for another grocery chain to come in here.
Sure.
You know, it's a 2-month season. 2 months of the year, everybody probably do well.
Well, actually, I
maybe
beg to differ today. It's with the shoulder seasons being so busy and much more popular than they have in the past. It's prime time is really a 6-month season. But what we've learned from the tenants that we're speaking to that are showing quite a fair amount of interest in our site, and that's on the Valero side, Valero partnership, is that they've done their research and their homework, and there is enough business without the prime business, say from May to October, without that increase in population to support another supermarket. And with that added benefit of the population boom between, say, May and October, there's overwhelmingly another one and possibly 1.5. So their demand is not just coming from what we recognize, but it's really coming from the supermarkets that we're talking to today.
What kind of numbers, again, this is a business you've been in for a long time.
Sure.
Right? We're developing and building supermarkets. What kind of number, a store of that size, what kind of population does it take to support a store?
You know, it varies, but certainly
There must be a rule of thumb.
10,000 people could support a store and a half. And obviously we have population booms up to 60,000, 65,000 a year in the summertime.
Right.
And I think it's pretty clear if you go at a peak time and you see how difficult it is to get into the current supermarkets that are there today and how long they are busy in a course of a 24-hour period, it's pretty evident that there's a lot of business to be had here. And what we're proposing is we would like to have a competitive situation where we have fair prices for the people on the island. We have a safe, friendly atmosphere to drive in and out of, to shop, and a good experience. And more variety on the island that's here today. One of the things that's lacking is general merchandise. General merchandise is hard to find on the island in a building. You basically have to resort to going online through Amazon and having it come in a UPS situation versus going to actually touch it.
Just again, what do you mean by general merchandise?
Socks, everything, other things than just the basic food items. So there is a lot of pent-up demand here to capitalize on. And again, it's not just us who recognizes this. The Valero family, when we first got together, say 3 years ago now, they weren't sure what really the people of Nantucket wanted, and they did a survey. And
Yeah, my uncle made a little survey sheet when people walked in the door so they can sign their name, email, or telephone number. Would you like to see it developed, yes or no, and what would you like? And everybody filled it out, and 98%, if not more, put down grocery store because that's what they felt.
What's changed in 15 years? 15 years ago,
I think a lot has
everybody
changed in 15 years ago.
Everybody said no market. There was still one grocery store at the time. And the population has gotten a little. The year-round population has gotten a little bigger. The summer population hasn't changed all that much. And
I think the need of having competition and having the hurt on the pocketbook today is significant, a lot more than it was before. And I think job opportunities are much more important today. Let's face it, we're coming off the worst recession since the Depression.
Well, let's come back to that in a minute. But let's take a worst case scenario and say some grocery store did come in, signed a lease with you all, the building was built, and then they, because they operate, as you know, on very thin margins in the grocery business, much thinner than many grocery stores are 1% and 2% margins. It didn't work. And they decide, even though they had a lease with you, they decided they were going to walk away from it. It was cheaper for them to pay off the lease over the term and then you end up potentially with a large empty building with no tenant.
Well, first of all, any supermarket company that's looking at this today is represented in the region and understands the market quite well. And they're not going to sign a 20-year lease with people like ourselves if they don't think it's going to work, first and foremost. Secondly, they do sign a lease, and these tenants are very, very solid credit-wise. So if something didn't work and they shut it down, they certainly wouldn't walk away.
Right.
They would look to redevelop it and to a use that would make sense for everybody. But like I've said from the beginning of this whole relationship and development, we are going to crawl before we walk before we run. And we are going to give the town of Nantucket the opportunity to get to know the supermarket company that we're talking to. And they can make that decision amongst themselves if they believe that it's going to be successful. And there's no question in my mind it's not going to be successful. It is absolutely going to be successful, but they'll have the opportunity to make that decision themselves. There is no question in my mind, and I think from the surveys and the level of interest we're being shown by these supermarket companies, that there's a lot of business to be done here. And again, we want fair pricing, good shopping experience, and variety.
What leads you to believe that we're not getting fair pricing? Given I know everybody does their surveys. I've done it myself. But there is an element of extra cost involved in doing business here. There's a whole logistical
I would encourage you to
it.
ask your members of Nantucket that question versus me, because I think that would be the true honest answer. There are a lot of people that have to shop off island because of the means that they have, and they have to save up to go buy groceries off the island.
I mean, it's pretty sad when you take your vehicle away, go away for the whole entire day, spend all that expense,
and
lose a day of pay, and you save more than half. I mean, it's unbelievable, the savings.
Shane, how many people in your
I mean,
family?
there's 6 of us in my household, and to go up there and buy groceries, I mean, my little children eat tons of fruits and vegetables, and that's the,
Okay. Let's get to this issue of labor. One of the things you said at that community forum was that this would provide jobs for Nantucket construction people. and people who are trying to get things done now can't find people to do them, which means that more people are coming over on the boat every day, or occasionally by plane, but not so much anymore. So what real benefit from a job standpoint is the construction piece of this to the community?
Sure.
And then the second part of the question is with respect to a store that's operating there. My understanding is a Stop and Shop can't find people now, enough people.
Sure.
Particularly in the summertime.
You asked a two-part question.
Yeah.
So the first part question on the construction jobs. Our goal is to keep as many jobs as we possibly can local. And as I said, we bought 75 properties. Mm-hmm. The large majority of those are going to be redeveloped, whether it's building two spec buildings of 5,000 square feet apiece, a spec home, an apartment complex. We're going to try to keep all those trades here and keep them busy. To the extent that they can't service it, or there's a task that's greater than they can provide, then that might require us to go off island for certain tasks. Now on this,
but all you're doing is driving up. If you're going to keep it local and compete with other people who are trying to do projects, all you're doing is raising the prices to everybody. Are you not?
Well, let me ask you this:
It's not like somewhere else on the mainland where you can draw in people to work from a large area.
I guess I would say that more jobs is better than no jobs. So I think you would find that more people on this island would like to have more opportunity to work than less. To get to your second question about grocery store jobs, the companies that we are talking to, that is a major conversation that we're having, that they need to staff the store with as many on-island jobs as they can. And that's their goal too. They want a local community to shop at their store and not anything else. And they understand that. And these two companies have operated in markets very similar to this, being a seasonal market.
Mm-hmm. What about the Gilwaukee side of the street? Where are you in terms of your thinking about what kind of business might go in the big building there? You had talked at one time about the fact that you were talking to local businesses. Is that still the case? Are they still?
Well, what we're trying to do is encourage local businesses to come. We're not talking to any particular local business as it stands today. As we said in all our forum meetings, is that as we go through and master plan this project, we're hoping for that area of the land behind the liner buildings to be able to house one or two buildings or three buildings for local businesses that are already on the island that need a larger space, need a different format to develop. But as I told you earlier, with a 10-year business plan, that doesn't necessarily have to be the first point of development. It can be in the middle or the end. And as we improve the development, that clearly will hopefully come to fruition and we'll be able to accommodate 1, 2, 3, or 4 businesses there.
What have you said to the neighbors, Shane, about what you're trying to do in terms of the fact that they're there in Naushop, specifically in a residential area? I understand, they understand, and you understand that the zoning permits you to do this. But the question is, what is the answer to them when they say that they're very concerned about what's happening? Not only because of the fact that it's going to bring a lot more traffic and so forth, but also because it's going to, people hang out in back parking lots where nobody can see them and all this kind of thing. These are concerns, and how do you assuage those concerns?